Hello, hello, and welcome to today's podcast of Basic to Bold. I am Jen Bjornson, your host. And before we get started, I always intend to have this podcast totally free and sharing my experience, what I've learned, how I overcame stuff, basically going from absolutely a lifestyle that I did not love, hated my life actually, into a life I love. I love it, and I'm happy to create it, and I just want it to get better and better. So in order to do that, if you could share this with people who you think it might resonate with, or if you find a lot of value in it, please share it and hopefully get the word out to help as many people as possible. So today I want to talk about the concept of increasing our lives and getting better in our lives using the power of 1 degree. So the way I was taught this concept was, if you're on an airplane and the pilot automatically just, cranks on the wheel and just turns it so fast, what's going to happen, right? There's going to be screaming, there's going to be mayhem, there's going to be chaos. And you're going in a different direction, but at the same time, it is full blown chaos. And so this concept that's kind of like in our lives. If you make this huge, massive change, then it's causing chaos and disrupting, and there's all this mayhem and carnage. However, if a pilot in the same airplane, he just slightly turns that airplane 1 degree, right? Just 1 degree. You give that 5 minutes, you're probably not going to notice a big difference, right? You're off course of where you were, but you're not that big of a deal. Give it an hour, give it a couple of hours, give it a longer period of time, and you are way off. You're in a totally different country. You're in a totally different place than what you planned. And I heard this concept and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yep, I totally get it, right? You just keep plugging forward. But it wasn't until I really not only understood this concept, but started implementing it into my life that I was going, oh, okay, got it. And I really try to do this on a daily basis now because it is that important. It is that life-changing. I just listened to a podcast from Ed Mylett, and he talked about, just different things in his life where he said, I had an extraordinary mother, and she did homework with me every night. And he said, some people only do homework with their kids when their grades are failing, or when it's the teacher asks them to, or it's, something really particularly hard. But he said, my mother did homework with me every night. And he goes, that made a huge difference. And he goes, I'm sure she didn't want to do it. I'm sure she was busy. I'm sure she was tired like I was. I didn't, nobody wanted to do it. But she did it. And he said she was an extraordinary mother, and she always picked him up from school, and she always made his lunch and stuff like that. And me being a mother myself, I that just resonated so much with me, because there is so much when I look at motherhood. It's kind of an easy one, and even parenthood, not just motherhood, but just parenthood in general, because I see my husband doing this as well, where our children, our family, and I'm not just our kids, but my husband, he's a priority to me. I'm a priority to him. Our kids are a priority. This family and our family dynamic is a priority. And so it's genuinely never crossed my mind to just be I don't want to today. Right? No, because I know over time, this is important. I know that, yes, there are some days where I'm oh God, I really don't want to, right? But you jump in and do it because you're no, this is important. And I need to do this. And I know in the long run that it's going to get me the family dynamic that I keep wanting to have. It's going to build our relationships. It's going to be improving. I may not always know what I'm doing, and I may, which that is exactly what we're going to dive into, how this plays out. And like I said, I may not always know, but the fact that I'm moving forward, it's just shown me how in other areas of my life I didn't do that. And I'm sure I'm sure you guys have not, I'm sure you're better than me, where you have put it together in other areas of your life where you're like, well, yeah, of course, like do this and you're going to get a better result. You're going to get the result you want. And I had put that in with relationships and our family dynamic and my relationship with my spouse, but I hadn't really ever thought of that in other areas. And don't ask me why, but I was like, I don't know why I can't get the result I want. I don't know why I'm not figuring this out. And then I heard this concept and I'm like, well, yeah, all the areas that my life is going the way I want it, that's exactly what I've been doing. Okay, so I want you, I'm talking about motherhood, I'm talking about relationships, but there are areas you are probably doing this. There are areas in your life where you're like, you have figured this concept out. So I want you to kind of be self-aware and really self-diagnose where you do this, that it makes sense. And you're like, oh yeah, I do it in this area and I do it in this area. Like I've really figured it out in these different areas. Now, where are you not doing that? And how can you get that same motivation in those areas that you're not doing it in? And I'm going to give you the tips and the tricks for how I do it, because for me personally, there are very specific areas where I don't want to say I'm naturally motivated, but I automatically see the result. And so I automatically go to, this is worth it. I'm going to put the time into it. Clearly, I see this is beneficial. So I'm already starting off motivated. And then there's other areas that I'm just like, I don't care. Like, all right, whatever, and we all do it. And I've seen this with so many people where they have one area completely figured out of their life, which is awesome. And then another area, they're like, I don't know, I'll figure it out later. Okay, so the first thing that I would have to say is that's kind of the first area where you have to take kind of an inventory of where you're doing this at, where you're not doing it at. And not just take an inventory, but like, where are you going to start, right? Like, I would say one of my issues, and I also see it like a lot of people, is where they try to bite off too much. We live in a society where we want a pill. We want instant gratification. We want somebody to come in and give us the formula that is going to automatically, in one workout session, give us the six pack. In one amazing trip, fix the relationship, where now we can go back to our lives, but now our relationship's totally fixed because we went on that honeymoon or that second honeymoon and now we're good. Okay, we good? Yeah. Awesome. We went on the one honeymoon. Our relationship is fixed. Forget the fact that we've been fighting for 15 years and we don't really have great communication skills, but we went on that one trip. So yeah, we're good. Right? We kind of have that belief system in our society today. I want a pill. I want a drink. I want a magic trip. I want just fix it. Just fix it and fix it now so I can get back to doing what I was doing. And that's not how it works. I'm sorry to say. And I did that for so many times, right? Like, give me the coach, give me the formula, give me the one person who's got it figured out. No, it doesn't work that way. So the next thing is just pick one area, because when you change, the amount of energy that it takes to shift and to change, it's a lot of energy. And especially if you're neurodivergent or you have to change a lot of brain patterns. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole science of this thing, but just, I know from experience, if you're shifting a pattern, if you're shifting anything in your brain, even if you're getting up 15 minutes early, to some people, it's not going to be that big of a deal. To other people and to myself, when I make big changes or even small changes, it's extremely tiring in my head. It's getting better, but I still have to remind myself when I go to make a change, be aware, like I have to tell this to myself, okay, be aware you're making a change. You're going to be more tired. This is now you're thinking about the process way more. So understand that because you're thinking about the process of what you're doing, it's not just a matter of doing the thing. It's energy to figure out how you want to do the thing. It's energy, and it may even bring up emotion that people don't even realize. Like, genuinely, people don't realize how much emotion can come up when you start changing things. Because the reason that you weren't doing that thing is because it was uncomfortable, or there was emotion there, or it was a lot better to not do the thing. And I hope this is making sense, because it's so broad, but put in your issue. So, for instance, for a very, very long time, I would always hear, especially in neurodivergent and like ADD and like anything to do with mental, people would talk about diet and exercise. Oh, you need to fix your gut, diet and exercise. I'm not disagreeing with that. And I'm not negating anybody who like has done that. That's awesome. And that helped you. That's great. I'm just saying, for me personally, I did all the diets and all the exercises, and it wasn't really fixing anything. And on top of that, the constant shifting of putting energy into meal planning and prepping and waking up at appropriate time to make sure I got a workout in, and trying to figure the workouts into an already busy schedule. And the emotion that it brought up, because now when I would work out, it would trigger something and it would make me feel nauseous for a few days. Like, it put me in bed. And so now that was turned into an emotional thing. And I get it. If this is just me, if this is not you, and you are like, what are you talking about? I get it. This might be just a very specific story to me. The whole point is, there are times that you're going to pick something, and you have to recognize that that is going to be very triggering, very emotional, a lot happening just to shift that one thing that you're trying to shift. All I was trying to do was work out. That's it. I was just trying to work out. It was putting me in bed for 3 days. I was emotional over it because now it was triggering my anxiety of, is this going to make me sick? And if it makes me sick, am I going to be in bed? And if I'm in bed, then how am I going to do meal plan and prepping? And this is supposed to make me feel better, but it's actually making me feel worse. And those are things that people don't talk about. They talk about all the great, if you start working out, it starts healing your gut. And if you start doing this, it's going to you're going to feel so much better and you're going to have so much energy. But they don't talk about how disrupting your life can create so much chaos. Even simple as working out. Now, I'll go into the fact that I was pushing too hard. I was doing too much. That's a whole thing. But people don't talk about how it can disrupt your life, and it's going to mess some things up. And it still does. I try different things now, and I now know the pattern of what it's going to look like. And it doesn't freak me out as much, and I'm prepared for it, and I schedule for that. But at the same time, half the time you don't know what it's going to do. So pick something small, because that's another thing. I would pick these huge things where I was like, I'm going to, here I am getting up at 7, and I'm like, I'm going to get up at 5, and I'm going to work out, and I'm going to do motivation, or I'm going to do meditating, and I'm going to meal plan, and I'm going to, do morning devotional and do gratitude and all this stuff. And I totally used to getting to bed totally used to waking up at 7 o'clock, and here I am trying to get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Yeah, I did that. And it's completely ridiculous. It's not ridiculous in the goal that I was trying to have. It was ridiculous that my expectation was so off the chart. It was such an unrealistic expectation is what I'm trying to say. And then I would sit there and I'd be like, well, I can't do this. Well, this is, people say this is working and it's not working for me. No, I was doing a lot. I was just a little extra with it. So pick something, one thing, and then bring it down to a level that is manageable. So when I started with this concept of I'm going to get up, if you are a person who's neurodivergent, let me just give you this concept. Do not think I'm going to get up early and work out. First, the goal is just get up. And if you just need to set your alarm 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, 15 minutes earlier, that's enough. That's enough. Like, just start there. That's enough. And if you're like, I don't want to say if you're like me, but if you have this idea where you try to go too hard, and this may not be you, but I do know some people who are like me and they go hard, but then they wonder why they can't figure it out, which is exactly what I did. So your goal is to bring that down so much smaller than what you think it's going to be. So when I started getting up earlier, at first I got up and I thought, I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out. And I got up, but then I was berating myself and ripping on myself for the fact that I wasn't working out. Like, I couldn't maintain both of it because my body wasn't used to getting up. And so then I'm like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out. But just the fact of getting up and then trying to work out, that was like, it was too much. It was wrecking my whole day. But I could get up. If I got up and I just like chilled or like read a book or like just sat there, then my body started getting used to, okay, this is what we're doing. And then getting up is not a big deal. So then when getting up wasn't a big deal, I thought, okay, I'm going to get up and I am going to do something small. So I walked, or I did a rebound, or I punched the punching bag, like things that were I could do. And this wasn't like, I'm gonna punch the punching bag for a half an hour. It was like, I'm going to punch the punching bag, or I'm gonna walk until I don't want to anymore. It's as simple as that. And I'd get to a point where I thought, okay, I don't really want to do this anymore. Could I go a little bit farther? Can I? Or am I trying to do too much again? And I know this sounds like kind of push yourself, but kind of not. That is where you're going to find this crazy balance. You've got to find this balance of like pushing yourself enough to where you're changing a habit, but not so far that now it puts you back in bed, or it gives you anxiety, or now it triggers bipolar or ADHD. Like, that's where the balance is for all my neurodivergent people. And so if you can find that sweet balance of, I'm going to change my habits, but not so much where it's overwhelming and frustrating, that's the sweet spot. And nobody can tell you where that is, right? Like, nobody can tell you where that is. But that is the sweet spot of, you want to change your life and push forward, but not so much push forward that now it puts you into this overwhelmed and now you're freaking out and you're back in bed. Okay? That's kind of the goal that we're heading towards. And you're the only one that can tell you if you're doing enough or you're doing too much. And sometimes you're gonna play back and forth. Like, you're gonna think, I'm doing so good, and you're gonna push forward and you're gonna go, that was a little too much. And then sometimes you're gonna be like, I don't really want to. I'm tired, and I walked for 5 minutes, and yeah, I'm good. And then you're gonna look back and you go, I could have done another couple minutes. I could have. And then sometimes you're gonna be like, that was great. What I did was great. And it comes back to kind of that being honest with yourself. You got to be honest with yourself. That is like, you're the only one who can be honest with yourself. Stop lying. Okay. So the next part that is actually really important is figure out like the end goal. Just start sloppily. And I've kind of covered this a little bit. Like, just start sloppily doing it, figuring it out. That's kind of the second part. The more you do it, like I said, you're going to figure some things out. You're going to some things you're going to figure out. Other things you're going to figure out with like the fact that you did it too hard. Other things you're going to figure out, I could have gone a little harder. Anyways, okay. Then the next thing. There's going to be a time you're going to be doing great, and then you're going to fall off the wagon. Like you're going to fall. You're just going to be like, oh, I'm over this. That time, it's going to happen. Okay. Like you just don't stress about it. Don't freak out. It's going to happen. However, there is going to be a time where you're going to go, I need to get back. Okay, we got to start doing the thing again. All right. Don't rip on yourself. Don't berate yourself. Don't say I'm such a schmuck. It's going to happen. And it happens to everybody. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody eats the donut when they shouldn't have eaten the donut. Everybody doesn't exercise when they know they should have exercised. Everybody goes too hard sometimes, and they pay for it. Some people don't do enough, and everybody does it. Okay. Here is the goal. And this is kind of the next point. Really try to lessen the time of when you fall off the wagon to getting back on the wagon. That's all everybody's doing. People who are successful, they've just shortened that time. But in the process of becoming successful, in the process of becoming fit, in the process of having a better relationship, they've just shortened that time. So let me kind of give you an example. My husband and I, we used to constantly fight about certain things. And basically we were horrible communicators. We're working on it. We've 100% gotten better. At the same time, there are still some things. In fact, to this day, right now, there is something we're still working on that we just figured out, like, oh my gosh, we got to work on that. So in the past, I would have stewed and I would have, and I'm so mad and blah, 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 until I blew up. Okay. Not a healthy response, but that's what I would have done until I blew up at him. Then we would have spent 2 hours running around circles of how mad I am and how he needs to change, or vice versa. He would have gone mad at me and how I need to change and blah, 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 blah. And finally we would have gotten to a point where I would have said, oh, hey, by the way, this is the problem. This is what I figured out. This is the problem. Now we need to come up with a solution. But it was always this really frustrating event of how we would come to that thing. Now, to date, we have a situation that it has not been fixed. And I recognize that this is a problem and we need to fix it. At the same time, here's how we deal with it now. I say, hey, I need to talk to you. Well, actually, let me back up first. I recognize that there's a problem. I also recognize that there is a very large chance that this problem is the fact that I am being triggered or I have an expectation. And it's not to say that it's only my problem, because it involves him. At the same time, I'm the one being triggered. I'm the one being mad. I'm the one getting upset. So that means it's my responsibility to figure out what it is I need to talk to him about. What it is that I want to clearly communicate to him. So the first thing now that I do is I communicate, you know what, just to let you know, I'm clearly triggered about something. I am frustrated about something. At the same time, I don't know how much of it is me and my part and how much of it is you and your part. I don't know that. So I communicate that. And I don't want to get off on this whole tangent about how I fix a relationship. But the point is, then at some point we come together. What I'm trying to explain is that just because something needs to be fixed doesn't mean, or something needs to change, doesn't mean that it's a process of changing that. Same with relationships. We have been married for 20 years. Something needs to be changed. I have no idea how we're going to change this. I now know what the problem is. I now know, and I discussed it with him saying, hey, this is the problem. Again, I don't know how much of it is me. I don't know how much of it is you. I don't know how much of this is our togetherness, but I do know we are not communicating very well on this. Did we fix the problem? No. Are we in a fight? No. Because we have now created a better habit of communicating. At the same time, we have more communication to fix because we still have yet to know how to fix this problem. And it's definitely a communication problem. And so we moved ahead sloppily, right? Because we didn't quit. We moved ahead sloppily, and moving ahead sloppily was like us yelling and, oh, you're the problem. No, you're the problem. Well, I'm not blaming you. You're blaming me. No, you're blaming, right? Like, it's this whole thing. Now we're not yelling at each other. We haven't totally fixed the problem, but we're not yelling at each other. And that's what it's going to look like. Same with like working out. At some point, you're going to be great. You're going to be doing awesome. You're going to be like moving forward. And then at some point, you're going to be like, man, I haven't worked out in like a month. And the first time you do that, it might be like 2 months. The only difference between people who have stuff figured out in one specific area is they have lessened that window of when they're not doing it or they fall off the wagon to getting back on the wagon. That's the only difference. Over the years of fixing my mindset and fixing my health is because I would go a certain amount of time and I'd be like, I got to fix this. And I'm so tired of fixing this. And I work on it, work on myself. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm done. Now I realize, no, you're never done. And I go through life and I find something that needs to be worked on and I work it out because I know it's just a constant thing, like going to the gym, working on my mind, removing and healing and triggers, responses. It's just kind of a constant thing. Something's going to trigger me. And instead of it freaking out and what do I do? And right? Like I work on it. Okay. Got it. Work on it. Let's move on. Now I'm kind of on the workout thing, right? Like I'm becoming a runner. I'm a runner now. And trust me, I was the type of person that this was like a full thing. I would tell people, if I'm running, you all better be running because something's chasing me, because something is happening. You all better be running with me. Now I'm a runner. And do I love it? I don't know. I don't know. I'll be really honest. I don't know. I'm on this weirdness thing where I can't decide if I love it or not. At the same time, I'm in a fitness challenge. I'm going to keep going. With that being said, what keeps me going is I haven't fallen off the wagon yet, but I know I'm going to. This fitness challenge that I'm doing is going to end. And I truly don't know what that looks like after this challenge is over with, because right now the challenge is moving me forward. So I'm going to probably get off the wagon of running. And right now I'm a runner, but what happens when this challenge is over and I don't really have anything pushing me other than the fact of, do I want to keep running or not? And I want to, but I also don't know if I'm enjoying it. And so the reality is, when I fall off the wagon and I decide to start running again, the goal is to just shorten the time that I am not running to when I am running. Or what does that look like to maintain it? Do I take a month off and then I get, like, what does that look like? And I know that sounds like a horrible idea, but you get what I'm saying. Like, what does that look like? Just get back on is usually what it looks like. Just start. You don't need to make up a big thing. Sometimes you need to figure out why you stopped. Sometimes you got to figure that out. Maybe you took too big of a bite. Maybe I don't want to be a runner. I tried it and I don't want to do it and I just want to walk. That's okay too. That's okay too, that I tried it and I don't want to run anymore. That's not a failure. That's me sloppily figuring it out. So when people say, hey, do you want to come running with us? I can say with sheer confidence, nope, hard pass. Or maybe I can say, you know what? It's not that bad. I am a runner now. But you're never going to figure it out until you try this, until you move forward. Okay. The last thing that I would have to say is I was really surprised as I started creating these habits. I was really surprised how, one, at the beginning, they were slow. I didn't realize like it would go that slow. But then I also didn't realize how compound worked. I'd never really seen it in action. I know compounding interest with like money and stuff like that. I knew that. And everybody's like, oh, would you rather have this or would you rather have, what is it? Would you rather have like $2 million or would you rather have like a penny every day and it's compound interest? And of course, everybody's like, you go with a penny. But like, I never understood that with habits. And that's kind of the same concept. The first, I'll use running as an example because this is the most frequent one. I never realized when I started running how much the first and the second week would suck. Like it sucks. But this second week, like the second half of the second week, I was like, oh, that wasn't horrible. It was not fun and it was not great, but I didn't feel like death. And that was surprising to me. I truly thought that like I would feel like death for a solid 6 months. And I was genuinely surprised. But then at the same time, I was also surprised how hard the first like week and a half was. Like that was hard. And I know that shouldn't sound like it was hard. But it was kind of demoralizing because I thought, oh God, I was fairly certain that the feeling of the first and the second week, I thought that was going to last probably like 6 months, 3 months, 6 months. And I was really surprised that how short that part was. And then afterwards I was like, oh, I can do this. I think I'm going to be able to do this. With that being said, you definitely have to recognize that this is going to be slow, especially if you're neurodivergent. I have noticed a good portion of people who aren't neurodivergent, and I could be wrong, but they seem like when they start stacking habits, it seems like they tend to be able to do a little bit more in certain areas. And to me, that was kind of frustrating because I felt like I was behind. I wasn't behind, but the reality is I felt like other people were going faster than me. And in some areas that is true, and then in other areas it's not true. So just be aware that is a possibility, but it could be true, but it also isn't true. Because in some areas I really saw people who they were like, I was going faster than them in some areas, and other people, like, they were going faster than me in some areas. And so that was kind of an interesting thing where I was like, oh, some things are going to be easier for you and some things are definitely going to be slower, and you just have to take that in stride. And don't let it demoralize you. Definitely, and this is kind of my last tip, definitely get your emotions set as to the why. Like, get your why when you're creating these habits. So one thing I like to do is I like to start off with the emotion that I'm going towards. So for instance, for me, I'm not doing things to start like running. I'm not doing it because I want to be a runner. I'm not really that interested in running. And most people put like a specific fitness goal is like weight or something like that. That to me wasn't motivating, because it was like, okay, I'm going to get to this weight, or I'm going to get to this like certain level, or I could bench something, or I could run a mile. Now what? Like, what's the point of that? That didn't motivate me enough. But what does motivate me is feeling fit, feeling tone, feeling stronger. And so I put an emotion towards things first, and then I figure out the habit that needs to happen to get that emotion. All right. So I love you guys. I really hope this resonated with somebody. I really hope that this helped. And like I said, please share this with somebody if you feel like it would help them, or it could really benefit them, or share this if it really helped you and we could just get the word out. So love you guys. Hope you have an amazing day.